The story begins by showing a woman in the throes of childbirth, with her delivery being aided by 3 witches. Simultaneously, a vampire named Draka, who is the father of the child, arrives on the scene. His purpose is to meet his wife and their soon-to-be-born child. However, the witches prevent him from approaching them. Despite his attempts, Draka is unable to reach his wife, and the child is born, but the mother tragically dies during childbirth. Upon hearing this devastating news, Draka is filled with rage and attacks the witches. However, the witches, using their magic, manage to subdue him. When Draka demands that the witches hand over his child, they refuse, declaring that they will raise the child until the time comes for them to choose their own path in life. The scene then shifts to a group of soldiers led by a man named Kerjak. Kerjak and his men have been given the task of securing a town from the enemy forces. When they arrive in the town, they are met with the disturbing sight of countless bodies strewn across the area, a clear sign of a massacre. However, something strange stands out. None of the corpses bear gunshot wounds. Instead, the bodies have been slashed as though by wild animals, and even more strangely, the amount of blood is far less than what would normally be expected in such a gruesome scene. As Kerjak and his men venture further into a nearby church, they are confronted with another grisly sight. More bodies piled up in a grotesque heap. Not long after, an elderly man from the town stumbles upon them, his face etched with fear. He claims that these horrors are the work of demons and urges them to seek out a dhampir, a half-vampire, half-human being who is believed to be the only one capable of stopping such evil. One of Kerjak's soldiers, irritated by the old man's frantic rambling, shoots him, dismissing his claims as the ravings of a man driven mad. The focus then shifts to 2 young men, Harlan and his close friend Yuri. They make a living by traveling from village to village, scamming people by convincing them that Harlan is a dhampir, a vampire hunter who can exorcise evil spirits and protect them from danger. Yuri plays the role of the talker, persuading the villagers to believe in Harlan's supposed powers. Meanwhile, Kerjak and his troops try to contact the command center to report the current situation, but receive no response. Kerjak then decides to stay overnight in the town until they receive further instructions. That night, while Kerjak's men are on watch, they hear a woman crying for help, and upon closer inspection, they discover that the woman is a vampire. Hearing gunshots from outside, Kerjak and his troops assume they are being attacked by an enemy, and they quickly move to locate the source of the sound. As the troops spread out to search the area, they are suddenly attacked by vampires. The vampires move with incredible speed, making it impossible for the soldiers to shoot them, and to make matters worse, their bullets seem completely ineffective against the creatures. After the vampires have left, one of Kerjak's men begins to believe that the old man's warning about the demons was not as absurd as it had seemed. He suggests that they search for the dhampir mentioned by the old man, hoping that this mysterious figure might be able to help them defeat the vampires that have been preying on them. Back with Harlan and Yuri as they continue their ruse on the villagers, they are once again interrupted by Kerjak's men, who capture the pair and take them to Kerjak's camp. Upon arriving at Kerjak's base, Kerjak informs them that his troops were completely massacred by vampires the previous night. Hearing this, Harlan bursts into laughter and says that vampires don't exist, and that he has only been pretending to be a dhampir. Enraged by Harlan's words, Kerjak drags him outside and shows him the bodies of his fallen soldiers as proof. Then, to determine whether Harlan and Yuri are truly dhampirs or not, Kerjak provides Harlan with a weapon, preparing him to fight the vampires. As they wait for the next attack, Harlan, growing restless, decides to investigate the church on his own. Inside, he comes across a female vampire, who pretends to be in need of help. As she draws closer to Harlan, intending to bite him, she suddenly pulls back in terror after catching the scent of his blood. Realizing that Harlan's blood is different from that of a normal human, the vampire recoils and pushes him away. Harlan, now terrified, flees the church, only to be ambushed by more vampires waiting outside. He tries to shoot them, but once again his bullets have no effect. The vampire slashes at him with claws, but to his shock, his hand catches fire when it comes into contact with Harlan's blood. The female vampire then warns the others that Harlan is not an ordinary human, but they continue their attack. However, Harlan manages to fight back and kills them. Meanwhile, Kerjak and his remaining soldiers are attacked by another group of vampires. Several of Kerjak's men are killed, but when Gorka, the vampire king, sees through the eyes of the female vampire that Harlan is a dhampir, he orders his vampires to retreat, except for the female vampire. The following morning, Kerjak and his men find Harlan still alive, along with the charred remains of one of the vampires he had killed the night before. The vampire's body had been burned by the sunlight, as is typical for vampires. Harlan tells Kerjak that there is still one remaining vampire hiding in the church, specifically the female vampire who had attacked him the previous night. Kerjak and his troops enter the church, but as soon as they hear the vampire's growl, fear overtakes them. Kerjak, however, refuses to let his men flee, calling them cowards. Despite his orders, the soldiers eventually betray him, abandoning both Kerjak and Harlan, as they realize that fighting the vampires would only lead to their inevitable deaths. Yuri pleads with Harlan to leave with the others, but Harlan refuses, determined to understand what is happening to him and why he can kill vampires so easily. In the end, the soldiers take Yuri and leave Kerjak and Harlan behind. The female vampire, Tesla, then steps forward and reveals that Gorka, the vampire king, had ordered the massacre of Kerjak's troops and the villagers. She also explains that Harlan is the product of a union between a vampire and a witch, giving him special powers that allow him to defeat Gorka. Though Harlan is skeptical, he can no longer deny the strange events that have been happening to him, and the fact that his blood has the power to kill vampires is undeniable proof that he is, indeed, a dhampir. Meanwhile, as Kerjak's troops are making their way out of town, one of them suddenly begins to vomit blood, forcing the group to stop. In the blink of an eye, Gorka, the vampire king, emerges from the fog and attacks them. At the same time, Harlan experiences a vision in which he sees Kerjak's soldiers and Yuri being slaughtered by Gorka. Grieving the loss of his friend, Harlan begs Tesla to take him to Gorka so that he can avenge Yuri's death. Tesla agrees, as she too wishes to be free of Gorka's control, which can only happen if Gorka is killed. Before heading into Gorka's lair, Harlan and Kerjak come up with a plan. They will coat their bullets in Harlan's blood, knowing that it is the only thing that can harm and kill vampires. As they approach Gorka's fortress, Tesla leads them into a trap that had been prepared by Gorka. She had no choice but to betray them, as Gorka's power was too great for her to resist. Gorka had already turned Kerjak's soldiers into vampires, and as soon as Harlan and Kerjak are in position, the vampire soldiers open fire on them. Kerjak and Harlan fight back, using their blood-coated bullets to kill the vampires one by one. After the battle, Tesla, under Gorka's control, appears with a weapon aimed at Harlan. Although Tesla does not want to kill Harlan, she is forced to do so under Gorka's influence. Fortunately, the shot is not fatal, and Harlan survives. Kerjak then helps treat his wound. Meanwhile, Tesla, who has fled, regrets what she has done, but it was all beyond her control due to Gorka. As she flees, she sees vampires attacking it, and Tesla decides to save her by killing the vampires. Unfortunately, her actions are discovered by Gorka, and knowing she has betrayed him, Tesla attacks Gorka. However, her efforts are in vain, as Gorka is far too powerful and easily subdues her. The next day, Harlan has fully healed, as he is no ordinary human, and any injuries he suffers heal quickly. They then manage to find Gorka's fortress, and upon entering, they split up to search for him. Suddenly, the place causes Kerjak to hallucinate, seeing his long-deceased child, which leads him to faint. As Kerjak regains consciousness, he sees Tesla, still alive, being held captive along with him by his former soldiers, who are now Gorka's men. Tesla is being tortured by being burned. When one of Gorka's men tries to kill Kerjak with his claws, Kerjak seizes the moment, breaking the chains binding them both and setting them free. Tesla quickly wraps a piece of the chain around the vampire's neck and hangs him, while Kerjak swiftly sets the vampire on fire, killing him. Meanwhile, Harlan finally finds Gorka, who had been waiting for him. Without hesitation, Harlan shoots at Gorka, but Gorka dodges with incredible speed. As we know, Gorka, the vampire king and ruler of darkness, is not easily killed by ordinary weapons. It is then revealed that Harlan's father, Draka, the previous vampire king whom we saw at the beginning of the story, was killed by Gorka to seize the throne. Now Gorka plans to eliminate Harlan as well, ensuring no one stands in his way of becoming the sole and most powerful vampire king, ruler of darkness. Rather than killing Harlan outright, Gorka brings out one of his minions to fight Harlan. This minion turns out to be Yuri, Harlan's friend, who has been turned into a vampire. Controlled by Gorka, Yuri attacks Harlan and manages to wound him. However, as we know, Harlan's blood can kill vampires if it comes into contact with them. So, instead of killing Harlan, Yuri ends up fatally wounding himself. Furious at the death of his friend, Harlan attacks Gorka, but Gorka easily overpowers him once again, leaving Harlan unconscious. At the same time, Kerjak and Tesla arrive to help Harlan, but their efforts are futile, as Gorka uses his powers to immobilize them both. Back in his unconscious state, Harlan enters a deep subconscious realm, where he encounters the three witches we saw earlier, as well as his father, Draka. The witches urge Harlan to choose between following them or his father. In the end, Harlan decides to side with his father. He awakens and rises again, but this time, he is different. He has gained the power of his father. Seeing Harlan's newfound strength, Gorka grows anxious and attacks him once more. But this time, it's not as easy for Gorka. He is forced to unleash his full power, transforming into a more monstrous form. Filled with confidence from his new abilities, Harlan launches a flying punch at Gorka. In the ensuing battle, Harlan ultimately triumphs and kills Gorka. After everything is over, a door in the room suddenly opens. When they enter, Harlan discovers a throne that once belonged to his father. He also finds a book that reveals there are still many evil creatures roaming the world. With this, Harlan decides to continue his life and embark on a journey to hunt down and eliminate the remaining evil creatures. And with that, the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing, you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.